What is going on, YouTube? I am Germ here. This weekend, Riot Games is bringing back Clash in League of Legends once again. This weekend being February 22nd and 23rd, you have that chance once again to team up with 4 of your friends, 4 of your teammates, and take on a tournament against people of equivalent skill level. It's an awesome experience. It's a lot of fun. It is the casual player's opportunity to get, to kind of dip their toe into competitive League of Legends, which is such a big part of League of Legends. It's really fun. It's totally different than solo queue, and people are really hyped and really excited about it for a reason. In this video today, we're going to be running through 5 team compositions that I think you guys can use to give yourselves a better chance of winning a Clash tournament in this upcoming weekend. Because the draft phase, because picking bans, because setting up a good team composition is such a big part of competitive League of Legends, and it's going to be such a big part in you guys winning Clash tournaments. I think this video will be really helpful, really useful tool for you guys, and it's just some of my ideas. They're not the best compositions in the world. They're not the most overpowered necessarily. They're not going to work in all scenarios, but they should be really solid ones that you guys should be able to kind of abuse this weekend. I did this video last time that Clash came out, and it seemed to do really well, seemed to be really well received, so hopefully we can kind of get that support on it again. With that being said, here we go right into that first team comp. The first team comp, I think, is just a little bit more of a standard meta team composition. The meta is always changing. What champions are good are always changing, and the champions that are good and competitive are way different than champions that are good in solo queue. So this first team composition, I think, has 5 champions that are all top tier in their role for competitive League of Legends. Pretty easy to pull off and synergize really well together. This composition is in the top lane Set, Elise jungle, Cassiopeia mid lane, and Misfortune Leona bot lane. I think a really solid core of any competitive League of Legends team composition is having a really solid bot lane. I think Misfortune Leona is one of the best bot lanes in the game right now for competitive. They're so strong. They can play on their own. They don't really need a ton of jungle intervention. They don't need a ton of help. But one weakness they have is that Misfortune doesn't scale extremely well in the late game. I think by having Cassiopeia in the mid lane, you can kind of make up for some of that damage a little bit. Cassiopeia, a really strong DPS mage mid laner who's going to scale significantly well into the late game. I think Elise is one of the best junglers in the game right now and is a great early game jungler that gets paired up really well with a great early game top laner in Set. I think Set is one of the best champions in the game right now. He can flex to so many different positions, so he's a great early pick in the draft. He's a great blind pick top laner. Him and Elise can set up really well for early tower dives. They juggle tower aggro really well. Elise can repel, Set can shield. It's disgusting. You have a strong 2v2 top, you have a strong 2v2 in the bot lane, and you have a early game jungler that's strong enough with Elise to cover for kind of Cassiopeia's weaknesses in the early game. I think this this team composition has 5 of the strongest champions in every role, and it is very solid when you put them all together. The next team composition is something a little cheesier. It's kind of abusing the new Soraka top lane. This is going to be Soraka top, Olaf jungle, Rumble mid, Ashe AD carry, and Nautilus bot lane. So, Soraka top, disgusting right now, certainly overpowered. It's going to be getting some nerfs on patch 10.4, but you should still be able to pull it off. It should be really strong. If the nerfs do gut it too much, you can still pull off a composition like this with the Sona as well. It still is going to be really strong. They do a lot of the same things. So, Olaf, he is really strong early. He can just run over teams. When he's getting the boost and the healing from something like a Soraka or Sona, he's just empowered even stronger. Picks like Soraka and Sona top lane, they don't scale significantly well in the late game. They're really weak in side lanes. They're not necessarily great in those late game team fights. But putting them in the lane, the advantage of that is that they spike sooner, they spike harder, they spike earlier. So you want to use that advantage by having that early game carry and Olaf being able to snowball run over the game. Rumble is another champion that is strong, really strong at level 6. He spikes at 1 item. You get the Leandries on him, you get the Sork boots. He can really start to take over games. He has a tool that is able to kind of position people into the Olaf. He can kind of get people really weak for the Olaf. He can clean up fights after the Olaf goes through. Ashe Nautilus, because this team composition does lack some reliable hard engage, by having Ashe and Nautilus. Rumble loves hard engage, Rumble loves CC, Olaf loves hard engage, Olaf loves CC. You have these kind of utility and support in the top lane to keep the Olaf alive, being able to take over fights and win fights. Then you have that utility in the bot lane, also a little bit of a late game insurance policy in the Ashe. And Ashe Nautilus is a great bot lane, a ton of CC, super annoying to lane against, pretty safe overall. And but this team composition is for sure around snowballing the game early, winning those first few mid-game team fights, and then ending the game off of that. The next team composition has a little bit more scaling in it, if that is more your thing. This is going to be Ornn in the top lane with Karthus jungle, Syndra mid, and then Xayah Rakan bot lane. Talking about those really strong bot lanes being a staple of any great team composition, Xayah Rakan is always going to be overpowered and competitive. They synergize too well together. Their lane is so good, and then they scale into the mid game really well, and they're pretty strong late game as well. So I don't see really a ton of problems if you're able to grab Xayah and Rakan at the same time in any phase of the draft. It's always going to be good. Syndra, just a really solid mid laner, ton of wave clear, scales decently into the game. She has a ton of zone control. She's one of the better mid laners right now in competitive League of Legends. She's really strong, doesn't have a ton of terrible matchups. Assassins can give her trouble at sometimes, but if she has the jungle kind of hovering her, keeping her safe, she'll be alright, and you do see less assassins in competitive in general. Anyway, she's a great control mage, a great option. And then having the Ornn and Karthus as your scaling options to really help out your team. Karthus, he's going to be an insane jungler. He's going to be so strong. He scales in the late game like a monster. And then Ornn, buffing up your whole team, giving you guys those Ornn items. Getting that empowered Rabadons onto your Karthus is going to be disgusting. Getting empowered Infinity Edge onto your Xayah, that'll also be really good. Syndra can get some empowered items as well, but this is mostly focused around getting your Karthus and Xayah to be just monster carries in the late game. Its composition is pretty hard to punish as well. Ornn gives you a ton of engage, a ton of CC and peel. Also, Karthus, if he dies, he doesn't really care. He still gets all his damage off. Xayah, she's hard to get onto as well because she can just press alt, reposition herself, and get off a ton of damage. I think this composition is one of the stronger compositions you can have going into the late game. I think it works really well together. Also, since Karthus is a little weak early, he's going to be getting invaded a lot. You have a mid laner in Syndra with a ton of wave clear that can keep mid lane shoved, so he's less susceptible to like ganks or not ganks, but invades from both the mid laner and the enemy team's jungle. If Syndra gets shoved, she can help him out. She can prevent the mid laner from roaming. So I think that does help the Karthus out a little bit as well. Helps him scale a little bit more. This next composition, it's a little crazier. I wanted something a little more off-meta, a little more unique and interesting. But it is something that you could see in pro play today. It's just not something you're seeing a ton in solo queue. This is going to be Gangplank top, Jarvan jungle, Diana mid, Aphelios AD carry with Lulu support. So Diana, she had never really been a champion you've seen competitive much, but she's getting some fringe play in both LCS, LEC, kind of around the world. She's really strong. When you pair her up with something like Jarvan, you have actually a really decent early game 2v2 with the Jarvan and Diana, ever since Diana had her rework where she's actually a champion in the early game now, but also their ultimates synergize so well together. That Jarvan ult with a Diana ult on top of it, being landed on multiple people, those people are just one shot. They're destroyed. If they don't have a dash or something, they have nowhere to go. It's pretty disgusting. Gangplank gives you another AoE option to drop on top of that, just kind of a really nice Wombo combo. But also, since you have a mid lane jungle duo that doesn't really scale very well, neither Jarvan nor Diana is going to be a monster like DPS threat in the late game. You have that top laner who is going to be that DPS threat scaling. He can also play the side lanes really well. Diana gives you a side lane option as well. It's a really nice 1-3-1 comp. And the Lulu is going to allow the 3, being the Jarvan and Aphelios, to stay really safe in the mid lane in that 1-3-1 as we get later into the game. And then also Aphelios and Lulu are going to scale really insanely well together as well. I think Lulu is one of the stronger kind of enchanter supports right now. Aphelios is obviously disgustingly overpowered AD carry that scales really well. I think this comp plays together very nicely. You have strong early game, strong late game, and you have a really nice win condition in that 1-3-1 with the Gangplank and Diana being able to dominate the side lanes. And finally, the last team composition. This one is probably going to be the least meta of all these, the least likely that you'd ever see in competitive, but I think it's a pretty interesting one and could be a fun one to pull off. This is kind of that super cheesy early game comp that's just looking to run over the early game, just absolutely destroy and end the game fast, because if they don't, they're going to lose for sure. This is Mordekaiser top lane, Lee Sin, Talon, Lucian, and Braum. Lucian Braum is one of the strongest early game bot lanes in the entire game. Braum's passive, Lucian's able to proc it so easily by getting multiple auto attacks off. He's able to stun people. They can get a ton of solo kills in lane. It's honestly one of the best 2v2s for getting kills just straight up in the bot lane in 2v2. Talon, he's going to be trying his best to get pressure mid lane and then start roaming, whether it's to bot lane or into the enemy team's jungle. That's why I love having the Lee Sin in this team composition. So Lee Sin is also able to just walk in the enemy team's jungle, invade, and he can have that help from the Talon. Lee Sin is already super strong early game. He's already super great in invading and can win most 1v1s. If you have a Talon coming over the top, or just even the threat of the Talon coming over the top, it allows Lee Sin to get free reign of the jungle. They have a ton of playmaking opportunities early. It can be really tilting to play against, and if you get an early lead and start to run over the game, it can be super demoralizing for the team. They start falling apart, and then you just win the game off that. Mordekaiser is in the top lane to give you just some AP damage, since you have an AD jungle, mid, and AD carry, obviously. And Mordekaiser does pretty well in the early game as well. Doesn't have a ton of bad matchups in lane. He can also he can also survive really, really well on his own if you are trying to play around the bot lane more. Mordekaiser is a really self-sufficient top laner. I think it gives you a nice mixed damage. The one thing about this team composition, it doesn't have a ton of reliable engage, but you're just looking to jump onto people, just snowball the game early and win off of that. I think that one is probably the craziest one, probably the least likely to work out, but I think it does sound pretty fun. It's honestly something that I could see a team of mine playing, because games are decided pretty early right now in this meta. If you can get a big lead at 15 minutes, you can snowball that into easy wins. You do have options to scale, and it is easier to scale in competitive scenarios where everyone's on comms and stuff, but getting an early lead is always going to be very, very strong. You're going to have an insane win rate if you're able to build early leads, and this comp is great for that. But that is pretty much it for this video today, guys. Definitely drop a like if you enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about these team compositions? Which one's your favorite? Which one's your least favorite? And what team compositions are you guys going to be running this weekend? I can't wait to hear about that. I wish you guys all the best of luck. I want to help you guys out on this channel, make you better players. I want to see you guys winning more Clash tournaments and all that stuff. If this video does well, I'll definitely, you know, I'm open to making more. I can always just come up with more good, crazy ideas for team compositions. The meta's always changing. New picks are always coming out and stuff like that. So I'd love to keep making more, especially as Clash gets more and more popular and Riot Games continues to do a better job with that. But that's pretty much it. Again, that's pretty much it for this one today, guys. Hopefully I catch you guys in the next video. But until then, peace.